Alright guys, welcome to Personality 1, and let's get started. This one's going to be a doozy. Back to tough, rigorous content. Here we go. Alright, what is a personality? Personality is the unique and relatively stable ways in which people think, feel, and behave. So this is how you behave on a regular basis. Now, we all have our crazy moments, okay? But your personality is the consistent, the expected behavior which you normally present, not the somewhat crazy ones you may present. Character is our value judgments of a person's moral and ethical behavior. So we all have a personality and we all have our character. Some of you are more moral than others. Some of you are more loose in your morals than others. So your character is your moral ability to stay true to what society deems right and wrong. Temperament is the enduring characteristics with which each person is born. I have a very high-strung temperament. My fiance has a very low-key temperament. He takes him a very long time to get angry. It takes me less than a second to get angry. So temperament is what we are born with. There are 4 perspectives in the study of personality: psychoanalytic, which is Freud's; behavioristic, including social cognitive, which is B.F. Skinner; humanistic, trait perspectives. Okay, these 4 perspectives are the foundation of all. Now, the psychoanalytic is Freud. This is where we start. He is the foundation of personality. The other 3 have very interesting takes on Freud's perspective, leaning towards either behavioristic, humanistic, or a trait perspective. Now, Sigmund Freud, he is the man of the hour when we talk about personality. He is the founder of the psychoanalytic movement. He's from Vienna. He lived in Europe during the Victorian era, which was a very sexually repressed time in our culture. Women were very covered. Talking about sex was not okay. Men were understood to be unable to control their animal desires at times, and a good Victorian husband would father several children with his wife and then turn to a mistress for sexual comfort, leaving his virtuous wife untouched. Okay, so that shows that women were supposed to be safe, protected from the idea of sex, while men were supposed to go find not virtuous women to have sex with in order to eradicate their needs. Women, especially those in the upper class, were not supposed to have sexual urges, and these become the foundation of Freud. He spends his whole life trying to say that is not true. This is the backdrop for his theory that women and men have sexual urges, and that shape our personalities. Now, to understand Freud, you have to understand the division of the consciousness. He has the preconscious mind, which is the level of the mind in which information is available but not currently conscious. So in my head, I'm just thinking, ooh, my dinner was very delicious this evening. Okay, I can recall it quickly. I can tell you exactly what I have, but I'm sitting here talking about Freud. The conscious mind is the level of the mind that is aware of immediate surroundings and perceptions. I'm sitting here in my room talking about Freud, trying to make connections to help this information process a little easier for you guys. That's conscious mind. The unconscious mind is the level of mind in which thoughts, feelings, memories, and other information are kept so they are not easily or voluntarily brought to the consciousness. Okay, typically when we repress memories, these fall into our unconscious mind. These are the motives behind which motivate us, but we don't always know the root of why. Freud believes these unconscious mind can be revealed in dreams and Freudian slips of the tongue. Okay, Freud's idea of the conscious is this. Think of it as an iceberg, just like the one that sunk the Titanic. The ego is at the top. Okay, the ego is the one that is our decider, act upon either the superego or the id. It is the one that listens to the social norms. The superego is the second largest part, which is the moral aptitude, and then the largest aspect of our personality is the id, our animal behavior. Okay, this iceberg represents the 3 levels of the mind. The part of the iceberg visible above the surface is the conscious mind. Just below the surface is the preconscious mind, and everything not yet in the conscious mind. Hidden deep below the surface is the unconscious mind, feelings, memories, thoughts, and urges that cannot be easily brought to the consciousness. While the two of the three parts of the personality, ego, superego, exist on all three levels of the conscious, the id is completely in the unconscious mind. So we react to our id in ways we don't understand or consciously aware of. Now, Freud's theory, the id is a part of the personality present at birth and completely unconscious. Animal behavior. Our libido is a part of that, the instinctual energy that may come into conflict with the demands of society's standards for behavior. Okay? What that means is our own human desires versus social desires, libido. Pleasure principle is which the id functions the immediate satisfaction of needs without regard for the consequences. If your body is telling you you're hungry, your body wants food now. Doesn't care if you're going to lunch in 10 minutes, it needs it now. The ego is part of the personality that develops out of a need to deal with the reality, mostly conscious, rational, logical. This is the part that's making the decisions. The reality principle is the one that controls this, the principle by which the ego functions, the satisfaction of the demands of the id, only when negative consequences will not result. So the ego chooses the id only when there's no negative consequences. The superego is part of the personality that acts as the moral center. Okay, this is the angel of the angel-devil, complex, and the ego is the one that makes the decisions. The ego ideal is part of the superego that contains the standards of moral behavior taught to us specifically by our social society. Conscious is the part of the superego that produces pride or guilt, depending on how well the behavior matches or does not match the ego ideal. The ego is the one that makes the decisions whether to listen to the id or listen to the superego. Bless me. Okay, so the superego is the one who does the moral. The id is the moral, the libido, the sexual urges, the animalistic behavior. Id, devil, superego, angel. The ego is you trying to make that decision. So, how does Freud's theory of personality development persist? Fixation. It's a disorder in which the person does not fully resolve the conflict in a particular psychosexual stage, resulting in personality and behavior associated with that earlier stage. So, if you do not progress through his personality stages, you get stuck. If you get stuck, that's called fixation. If you get stuck in the phallic stage, then you are typically masturbating and doing all of these things, and you don't progress into, further status. The psychosexual stages are 5 stages of personality development proposed by Freud and tied to the sexual development of the child. So all of a sudden, we have Freud in this Victorian era where men aren't even allowed to be talking and sleeping with their wives except for having children. All of a sudden, we have this gentleman talking about psychosexual stages, saying that not just males, but men and female children, from the moment they were born and wanted to have sex. So you can understand where the controversy comes in. So, Freud, the first major stage is the oral stage. It's the first stage occurring in the first year of life, in which the mouth is the erogenous zone and weaning is a primary conflict. It is id dominated. The baby wants milk now. The baby wants to put things in its mouth. That is where it gets sexual pleasure, according to Freud. So, when we talk about the oral stage, the id is the most dominant aspect of it. It wants instantaneous gratification. When a baby's hungry, he cries out he wants to be fed right now. The second stage is the anal stage, occurring from about 2 to 3 years of age, in which the anus is the erogenous zone and the toilet training is a source of conflict. At this stage, the ego develops. At this stage, babies are being taught that pooping in their pants, pooping in their diapers is not acceptable, pooping in the toilet is. At this age, the ego starts developing, saying, okay, it is socially inappropriate. The mother is teaching the child, like slapping the kid's butt every time the kid poops in his pants. It is socially not appropriate to toilet train your child to poop in your pants. You have to poop in a potty. At this stage, the ego starts saying, wait, if you have to poop, you can't just poop. You got to poop in a toilet. The anal expulsive personality is a person fixated on the anal stage who is messy, destructive, and hostile. So, if you are someone who is messy, destructive, and hostile, Freud would say you have the anal expulsive personality. That in your psychosexual growth stages, you have fixated on the anal stage, and this is how you are now relating to the world. Anal retentive personality is a person fixated on the anal stage who is neat, fussy, stingy, and stubborn. Okay? These are two of the major fixations I've pointed with these. Okay? I think you're all kind of thinking, do I have this personality? Am I fixated on this stage? No. Alright, the third stage is the phallic stage. It occurs from 3 to 6 years of age, in which a child discovers sexual feelings. This is when the superego develops. Okay? This is where the moral guidepost is found. However, my computer doesn't want to work. Okay, so at this stage, the Oedipus complex is a situation occurring in the phallic stage in which a child develops a sexual attraction to the opposite parent and jealousy of the same-sex parent. Also, identification, a defense mechanism in which a person tries to be like someone else to deal with anxiety. We talked about this last week, should be pretty familiar. So the phallic stage, what can happen is the Oedipus complex. Alright, the fourth stage is latency. It's occurring during the school years in which the sexual feelings of the child are repressed while the child develops in other ways. Genital is sexual feelings reawakened with appropriate targets. Okay, here's a nice little chart from your textbook that kind of summarizes it. Alright, so the first stage is oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. Once we are in the genital, it is sexual behavior, immature love or indiscriminate hate, uncontrollable working, or inability to work. If you have those issues, those are some of the fixations. Please look at the fixation side of this column. It'll help you kind of see what can happen if you do not progress these stages normally. So Freud's psychoanalysis, it's a term for both the therapy, for the theory of personality and the therapy based upon it. Now, Freud had all of these ideas, psychosexual stages, and wrote volumes and volumes of books about what could happen, why things happen, and in the progression of the creation of the personality in regards to the id, the ego, and the superego. Well, he became very popular with a lot of people who believed in his ideas. But as his ideas got a little bit further and further and further and further into the land of crazy, people were like, whoa, 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 we think Freud has some good ideas, but we don't really necessarily agree with all of his ideas. These people became known as Neo-Freudians. They're followers of Freud's who developed their own competing theories of psychoanalysis. So they have some of the same structure of Freud's ideas, however, they have departed Freud in other aspects. Carl Jung developed a theory of collective unconsciousness. Now, what that is that in his theory, there is a personal unconscious, Jung's name for the unconscious mind as described by Freud. So you have all of these things in the back of the mind that you're not thinking of that are still influencing you. The collective unconscious is the name for memory shared by all memories of the human species. Like, for instance, we all have the beginning memories of, apparently we all have the collective memories of making fire and, you know, knowing how to kill animals and all that stuff. So we have the personal unconscious, which is stories maybe we've repressed when we were in childhood, maybe of abuse or violence. Then we have the collective unconscious, which is shared between all of us, all of the human species. Archetypes is Jung's collective universal human memories. We use archetypes in English, you know. The guy with the crooked nose is always the bad guy. You know, tall, dark, and handsome is always the hero. You know, all that stuff is universal human memories. Some other Neo-Freudians is Adler. He proposed feelings of inferiority as a driving force behind personality and developed birth order theory. Now, Adler believed that your placement in the birth line added to your idea of how important you were. He believed that firstborns felt they were truly entitled and had more going for them, so they became very motivated. He believed that middle children had to deal with the inferiority of not being as good as the first child. He believed that the baby of the family was so coddled and so taking care of the baby had a good sense of self, but not highly motivated. Horny is another aspect of Neo-Freudians, developed a theory based on basic anxiety and rejected the concept of penis envy. Now, Freud believed that all women were jealous of men because men had penises. Horny thought that was absolutely ridiculous, and she said that our personality is shaped by anxiety. The more anxiety we have in our childhood, the more aggression, hostility, and outward aggression, essentially, maybe in business or in any other ways, are going to be projected. She came up with many different ways to define basic anxiety. Anxiety created when a child is born into a bigger, more powerful world of older children and adults. So as soon as we're born, children are born with anxiety because they are not nearly as powerful as the other people in the large scope of the world. Neurotic personalities is a maladaptive way of dealing with relationship and Horny's theories. So she came up with about 10 or 12 neurotic personalities. All types, from ranges of aggression to depression to happiness, so all of these truly extremes, and they're maladaptive ways for dealing with the relationships people are faced with. How to face the relationship with your mom, how to face the relationship with your dad, brother, sister, whoever. Erikson developed a theory based on social rather than sexual relationships covering the entire lifespan. He believed our personality is shaped rather than specific events, but by specific people. The more people we come into contact, the more our personality changes. So, interesting. And now, the modern psychoanalytic theory, current research has found support for defense mechanisms. We have proof that there are different types of defense mechanisms, and they are very relevant and used quite often. There is a concept of the unconscious mind that can influence conscious behavior. There is something going on in our heads. We just can't officially prove what it is or understand the depths or limitations of that control. Other concepts cannot be scientifically researched. Okay? When we talk about the id, the ego, and the superego, and the relationship between the three, and which one comes first, and the why some people are sexually attracted to their parents, all of these things we cannot prove, which is why it's part of a theory, not a law. Behaviorists define personality as a set of learned behaviors, responses, or habits. So when we talk about behaviors, it's about actions, habits, something seen. They don't care about what's going on in the head. Habits and behaviorism, sets of well-defined learned responses. So, for instance, I get to school every single day at 6:30. That's my habit. I come in, I drop off my lunch, I fill up my water bottle, make copies. That's my habit. It is a well-learned responses. Social cognitive learning theorists are theorists who emphasize the importance of both the influences of other people's behavior and a person's own expectancies on behavior. So we take our own thoughts and what society and other people's thoughts together, and that's what creates our social cognitive. Okay, it's taking in all this information on a social context and putting it together to come up with our own guidelines. It's high school, essentially. Social cognitive view is a learning theory that includes cognitive processes such as anticipating, judging, memory, and limitation of models. So we use all the information from our own experiences and use them to control our future. Reciprocal determinism is Albert Bandura's explanation of how factors of environment, personality, characteristics, and behavior can interact with future behaviors. He believes in self-efficacy, which is the individual's perception of how effective a behavior will be on a particular circumstance. It's not the same as self-esteem. So what Bandura believes that your environment, personal characteristics can determine and interact with your future behavior. So if you're a positive person, you're going to have a positive life. If you have a negative attitude, you're going to have a negative life. Okay? He believes the way we see our actions interpret how others will interpret them. That if we have a positive personality, we have positive things that happen. In Bandura's model of reciprocal determinism, there's three factors: influence behavior, the environment, which consists of the physical surroundings, the potential for reinforcement, the person, the cognitive and personal characteristics that have been rewarded in the past, and the behavior itself, which may or may not be reinforced this particular time. When things are reinforced, they happen again. We've learned this in learning time and time again. The more something's reinforced, the more likely it is to occur. Now, the humanistic theories of personalities is the humanistic perspective. It's the third force in psychology that focuses on those aspects of personality that make people uniquely human, such as subjective feelings and freedom of choice. We don't have to do something. You don't have to act a certain way. We choose. We have the freedom to choose how we're going to react to something. You know, when a fire is going up and engulfing an entire building, you have the decision to go in and save the dog, or you do not have the decision. There's no certain law. Okay? So humanistic is the very positive perspective that says you can't just call us human nature. You know, you can't refer to us just as animals. We have something divinely human about us. Developed as a reaction against the negativity of psychoanalysis and the deterministic behavior. So, behaviorism believes that everything's determined and you just have to do it. Humanism believes that you have a choice and that you are fulfilling that choice. Now, Carl Rogers' theory of personality is self-actualizing tendency. It's a striving to fulfill one's innate capacities and capabilities. So, he's a humanist. He believes we have our personalities there to fulfill our own needs and desires in a positive way, to improve the world. Okay? Some would say people go to work every day in order to make the world a little bit better place for their families. Self-concept is the image of oneself that develops from interactions with important, significant people in one's life. The reason why we work hard and the reason why people are dedicated to their jobs is because we want to have positive interaction. You don't want to go home and have to tell your kids you can't buy them dinner tonight because you have no money. You're doing it in order to hold a high self-concept. Self is the archetype that works with the ego to manage other archetypes and balance the personality. So when we talk about self in humanism, it's the ability, it is this thing that manages everything else, balances the personality. Much like the ego and the id, ego and superego, the self is the one that balances the animalistic reactions and the moral. It's the one that makes the choices. The real self is one's perception of actual characteristic traits and abilities. Now, if I ask you a question about, oh my God, did you see what that girl was wearing? Yes, like, and as this girl with a crazy outfit walks by, in your head you might be like, oh my God, that is awful. Ugh, what was she thinking? But when I ask you that question, you're probably going to say, oh, I've seen worse. Like trying to be nice. Saying, oh, I've seen worse is self. What the dialogue that's going in your head, unfiltered, would be the real self. The ideal self is one's perception of whom one should be or would like to be. Now, if I give you the same scenario of, oh, did you see that girl? The ideal self would say, oh my God, how beautiful. She's being an individual and interpreting the way to wear that hideous outfit. Okay? The ideal self is just what we all wish to be. Morally true, focused on the positive, never on the negative. You know, that's not, you know, it's the best of what we'd like to be. So Rogers' real self and ideal self. According to Rogers, the self-concept includes the real self and ideal self. The real self is a person's actual perception of traits and abilities, whereas the ideal self is the perception of a person would like to be or think he or she should be. When the ideal self and the real self are similar, matching, the person experiences harmony and contentment. When there's a mismatch between the two selves, the person experiences anxiety and may engage in neurotic behavior. So, when we say that I am an amazing basketball player, in my ideal mind, I'm saying I am an awesome basketball player. In my real self, I have to work really, really hard, but I do well on the court and I help out my team when I can. That's a match. Okay? I'm a really great basketball player. I work really hard. When the game comes, I can perform. That's a match. If I say I am a great basketball player, yet I don't work at it, I don't try, and I cut the team, I get cut from the team because I'm a terrible player and I'm a terrible teammate, that's a mismatch. When you have that much of a gap, there's a lot of anxiety. When you have a lot of anxiety, you need to create a defense mechanism. What that defense mechanisms could be any of the ones we discussed last week, saying it wasn't my fault, the coach is against me, using all of these crazy examples. Now, Rogers' theories of personality is a positive regard, warm affection, love, and respect that come from significant others in one's life. So Roger believes that if you have positive regard, you're going to have a positive personality. Unconditional positive regard is positive regard that is given without conditions or strings attached. You meet very few people in your life who truly love you for who you are. You're going to meet a ton of people who love you for who you are because what you do for them. Okay? Everyone knows someone who likes them because they are very popular, they do really well in school, and they just want to be near them. You're going to have a lot of those people. Conditional positive regard is positive regard that's only given when the person is doing what he or she providers a positive regard's wish. So, when your parents are happy with you, they're probably going to tell you. When they're not happy with you, they're probably not. Fully functioning person is a person who is touched and trusting with the deepest, most innermost urges and feelings. Okay? So when you understand the reasons why you act, reasons why you think, how you interact and do all this stuff, then you are a fully functioning person when you understand all parts of your being. It takes years, like I'm talking 30, 40 years to figure it out. Now, trait theories of personalities. Trait theories are theories that have endeavored to describe the characteristics that make up a human personality in effort to predict future behavior. So instead of looking at theories, we're now looking at specific traits and seeing how they interact. A trait is a consistent, enduring way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. Allport was the first one to come up with a list of about 200 traits and believed that these were the traits for part of the nervous system. Now these traits are happy, sad, mad, glad, all of that. Cattell reduced the number from between 16 and 23 with a computer method called factor analysis, and that's the one we typically use today. Now, when we talk about Cattell's self-report inventory, this is an example of personality profiles based on Cattell's 16-point self-report inventory. The two groups represented are airplane pilots and writers. Notice that the airplane pilots, when compared to writers, tend to be more controlled, relaxed, self-assured, and far less sensitive. Writers, on the other hand, were much more imaginative and better able to think abstractly. So you can see all of these 16 points that there's reserved, outgoing. There's an opposite each, and people rank themselves. And you can see that large groups of people, whether you're an airplane pilot or a writer, typically fall within the same. Trait theories of personality. Surface traits, aspects of personality that can be easily seen by others in outward actions of a person. So the way you interact with the world. Source traits are more basic traits that underlie the surface traits forming once the core of the personality. I'm a highly motivated person. It's because people told me I was stupid when I was young. Source trait. Me being cutthroat and work really hard. Surface trait. Example, introversion is a dimension of personality in which people tend to withdraw from excessive stimulation. Okay? Too much going on, they withdraw. Now, the Big Five theory is the one we typically go for. It's called the Five-Factor Model, Big Five. It's a model of personality traits that describe 5 basic trait dimensions. Openness is one of the 5 factors. Willingness is to try new things and be open to new experiences. Some people are very open on a scale of 1 to 5. Some people are not. Conscientious is the care a person gives to organization and thoughtfulness of others. Dependability. Okay? A person who is conscientious is aware of their surroundings, and say you're in a restaurant and your group gets really, really loud. They're like, hey guys, let's take it down a little bit. Everyone around us is looking at us. Conscientious. Extroversion is a dimension of personality referring to one's need to be with others. There's extroverts and introverts. Extroverts are people who are outgoing and sociable. Introverts are people who prefer solitude and dislike being the center of attention. Miss Reeves. Agreeableness is the emotional style of a person that may range from easygoing, friendly, and likable to grumpy, crabby, and unpleasant. Okay, so how nice are you to other people? Neuroticism is the degree of emotional instability or stability. Are you predictable, easygoing, or are you all over the place? I think I'm pretty all over the place. Okay, so here's a nice example from your textbook of the Big Five. That's all I have for you this week, guys. Personality 1, a lot of content, a lot of names. Hopefully this helps. We'll be hitting it hard. You have a test on Friday this week, which is definitely not normal for us. So if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. And I'll see you in class. Good luck. See ya.